in innovation has carried us this far, and I hope it'll take us further.
How many of you would like to meet an astronaut? Hands up if you'd like to meet an astronaut. You see, they're absolutely, yes, they are absolutely fascinating. I had an astronaut stay at my house last week. It was fascinating. But it's one of those things, along with dinosaurs, that's the other thing that sets children off. I mean, 6-year-olds, everybody always says to me, science is so hard for kids. And yet, how is it at 6 years old, they know the names, the complicated names of about 40 or 50 dinosaurs? They can do it, you know, they have those skills. But let's talk about some of the barriers to collaboration, because, I mean, what do you think that they are, Congresswoman, for the barriers to global collaboration as far as you're concerned, particularly on the educational front?
Well, everything to a degree goes back to money and whether or not programs can be funded. Although I think with the advent of technology, that barrier is being penetrated quite a bit. Also, I believe that with more collaboration, we can have more sharing of those dollars so that every country is not totally independently doing research or totally independent sharing. We can use the two-way cameras and different technology to share with our young people in classrooms. Distant learning has become a very common thing in my home state because it's so large and we have a shortage of teachers in certain specialties that can be filled in through the distant learning, through the technological contacts. And so I think the more that we incorporate technologies, the more possible we can have more sharing.
Do any of the rest of you have experience of these things called massive open online courses, MOOCs, this sort of global reach and online education? I mean, do you use them much in South America?
We are not using it as in its full potential. I think it certainly will play a role in global education in the region. We still have some language barriers in terms of talking about the global collaboration. For some of the students in Latin America, English proficiency is a problem in terms of getting positions or training abroad. We're working on that. We have a special program of fellowships in Argentina to promote short-term fellowships in different countries, like from Korea to China, Canada. And in most cases, some of the applicants are rejected because of the lack of proper English proficiency. So the other thing is mobility. Visas are also a problem. But all of this can be this problem can be overcome by using these new technologies. I mean, if they can now watch a conference in their computers. The use of this new technology by the young generations is much more intensive before. So I think they're more inclined to watch a conference in their computer than to watch a regular TV program or to attend to a meeting. So I think there is a lot of work to be done in order to improve the quality, to organize the curricula, because we have maybe too much information. So it's difficult for a student to navigate in that immense ocean of information. So, but we're working on that. I think it's probably the best way to improve our education in the region.
Mr. Hanekom, what role has government got in rolling out that sort of mass participation in order to engage and interest young people to go into the science careers that are so necessary in these big global collaborations?
Yeah, okay, I'll refer to that in a moment. I just want to say something about online education, because clearly that's one of the ways that you can get information to learners and educators And it's one way that you can stimulate the interest in the sciences, which I'll touch on in a moment. But the online education or digital education is clearly the way the world is going and will be going. But it should be approached with some, we shouldn't get too prematurely excited, and do our homework properly and not outstrip each other, because it's all very well to have it as a technology, as these, but if you don't have connectivity, you don't have it. And so in developing countries, there is a massive connectivity challenge. And then, of course, for many schools in our own country, it's an unfamiliar technology. So, getting schools connected, getting tablets introduced, I think we should learn from some of the laptop per child programs. Some have worked very well, and some were introduced in great haste, and the homework wasn't, or the groundwork wasn't done properly, and then it didn't have the desired results. We have a pilot in South Africa where we are introducing tablets in a rural district. But these are it's so different from an urban area or in a developed country, where most of not only the learners, but also the educators have never really had a computer. Some of the learners have never touched a computer or seen a computer. They have cell phones. So we need to use cell phone technology to assist with out-of-school learning and as an education assistance tool. But in the introduction of tablets, I think a step-by-step approach is very important. And it does not replace I believe anyway, it doesn't replace the importance of what happens in the classroom. And then the teacher starts assuming a different kind of role. The teacher becomes a facilitator, if you like, and assists the children in using this technology that is in the classroom and out of the classroom. Perhaps its greatest value is out-of-school learning, assisting with homework, and especially, again, in a developing world context where when there's bad weather, for example, I mean, these are problems that you don't particularly experience in Europe or North America, but in many parts of the world, during certain periods when there's heavy rainfall, kids can't even get to school. Or, if I may put it bluntly, schools without sanitation during certain times of the month, during menstruation, girls don't go to school because it's embarrassing. So those are things that we have to bear in mind before we think that some technology is going to offer all of the solutions. It has to be an integrated solution, and we have to deal with things together, otherwise it won't have its desired effect. Getting kids stimulated and wanting to do mathematics and wanting to do science, I think Senator Johnson has spoken about it. I mean, that is the critical ingredient. Very interestingly, in our country anyway, there's a correlation, general correlation, between better resource schools and results. But there are very notable exceptions where very badly under-resourced schools do magnificently well. And it's often to do with the management of that school, the principal. But at the end of the day, you have individuals who excel, and it's about wanting to excel. So the more kids you get wanting to do well, so and wanting to go, let's say, wanting to go into the sciences because it's exciting, because it's sexy. So a lot of our programs in South Africa are starting to focus on that, making science and the various sciences, making them attractive career options. Through particular programs, through science centers that people can go to, and sort of stimulates their interest, like the little show we saw this morning. That sort of thing makes science fun. And so if you can make science fun and make it attractive, then you're going to have more people wanting to do well in it.
And we shouldn't forget that Africa, I think, is the most fantastic hotspot of innovation. I mean, if you look at, for instance, mobile telecoms and all sorts of innovative ideas and programs, go to Africa. I mean, absolutely astonishing. I mean, they can teach us how to do innovation. I think it's fantastic.
I think that's a very interesting question, but the other panelists might be able to answer. I mean, we should be careful about these sort of throwaway comments, but it's true that to some extent, adversity does drive innovation, but only to some extent. So in the face of difficulty, you innovate. But innovation also happens, under other circumstances. It has to be supported and nurtured, and there has to be reward for innovation, and there has to be, of course, a price to pay for the absence of innovation. And so it's not as if adversity on its own is going to be a major driver of innovation. But it certainly does, when you're faced with difficult circumstances, people do find innovative ways of surviving, and that is true.
Mm. Professor Bourguignon, what particular skills do you think are needed by the new generation in order for them to collaborate successfully at a global level? I mean, at the ERC, you see a huge range of the very newest of sciences, the sort of sciences, the blue sky stuff that is going to lead to innovation in the future. What sort of scientific skills do you think are going to be needed in the future?
It seems to me that science now is facing new challenges. One of them is in particular the pressure to go fast. And I think this is, of course, pressure which has existed before, but I think it has reached a new peak. And from that point of view, as a mathematician, we know that, well, problem can be solved sometimes some centuries later. So you have to be patient from time to time.
You're thinking of Fermat's theorem, are you?
Yeah, or some others. I mean, there's still some very nice, interesting open questions. So my mentioning this question about the speed is the fact that one has to respect the fact that depending what you're looking at, sometimes not delivering the answer immediately is not proof of low quality, but just maybe that you are looking at tough enough problems. So from that point of view, the idea of ERC in particular was to give people 5 years, because really there has been in the world an accumulation of short-term contracts which are putting huge pressure on people, and I'm not sure it's the optimal way of delivering good result in science. So I think this question of giving enough time to develop is very important.
And also, of course, if you're collaborating on a global scale, you need time to develop those relationships before you can then develop the science.
That's correct, for sure. In particular, if you think of a collaboration as a deep collaboration, not just somebody who makes a remark on what you have just posted on the web, which can be very useful, by the way, but that's not enough. If you really want to go into true and profound and really very stimulating collaborations, you need time to know people, to know exactly what they know you don't know, and in what part of, of activities you can share, what part you need to look for even other collaborations. So I think from that point of view, the new generation, I think, has to be very mobile in terms of subjects, but still keeping in mind that to do important things, you need time. And I think that's something which quite often governments have difficulty to admit, that is, for a large part of research, actually giving short deadlines almost assure you that the result will not be that great. Maybe you will achieve some things, but it's very important to give research enough time to develop. So this is one of the skills. The other skill, which is obvious, but I think the new generation is fantastic at this, I see this with my grandchildren, is adaptivity to new environments. And when I realized last time, actually last weekend, I got a call from my granddaughter. She's 6. She was using the telephone of her mother in a way which I didn't expect, because she was sending SMS, messages, and she's just learned how to read, and she sent me SMS with the... And actually, my surprise, with no mistakes. So I was very shocked.
When she gets to be a teenager, you'll find you won't understand what she's written in the text message.
But just to see that this adaptivity, which I think is so much stimulated now by new technologies, will be something also that the new scientists will have to master, which is not just being a slave from that, but really to, really improve it, or even to elaborate on them and make them real tools to help them in their projects. So this is something which my generation has not been used to, and I'm sure the new generation has been has to know about it. But maybe a last point which I want to elaborate on what has been said on culture, which I think quite often collaboration, of course, expose you to other cultures. But I think it would be really a very, 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 very grave mistake to believe that all cultures are just can be fused into one. I think being aware of the very deep roots of different cultures is extremely important. In particular, I've had the chance of being exposed a little bit to Asian cultures, Chinese or Japanese, And really, there are very basically some different ways of reacting to things. And this has to be understood, this has to be respected, and this actually brings new viewpoints on things. So it's an asset, it's not a weakness. So diversity is not something we should fight against, but we have to be aware of the diversity
and we should embrace.
Cultivate. Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
You've got some enthusiasts on Twitter, Jennie. Somebody called Carmen is pointing out, said that Jennie pointed out that global collaboration, understanding culture and lifestyle is key for the innovation process. So obviously people are out there agreeing with you. But I wanted to let me ask all the panel before I go into you, the audience. Another question that's come up on Twitter from Amy Colgan. How best can developed nations collaborate effectively with developing nations to meet global challenges like food security? Easy question. Who wants to tackle that?
Well, meetings like this, people chose to come to interact with each other rather than stay home and get it online. And I think that the more we do that, the smaller the world becomes, but also the more ideas are exchanged, the more we know about cultures, and the more we can embrace those cultures, because all add to the quality. And that's one of the things that I brag about the United States, is that we are a nation of nations, and we share all cultures. And that's the beauty of the nation, and that is our strength. When large companies get ready to recruit, they can find people from all over the world right in their area to help them find people from other places in the world. And when you travel around the world, you see some mixture, but you never see it as great as the United States. And that's why I call my country a magnet. And out of that, we have gained because of the mixture of those cultures, learning from each other, and not just watching it on television. People have come here because they want to interact with other people. And that's what we have to offer our young people as well, trying to offer them early experiences of other cultures, of better ways and different, not necessarily better, but different ways of doing things, so that that can be incorporated in their basic growth.
Jennie.
Well, yes, especially I think on the part of understanding, establishing the importance of love, I think it's very important. I give you a good example of China. Treat Chinese government like a granny. I think it's a good way of assuming. Because it's like how I learned my different dialects, because my grandmother couldn't speak other languages. So it's better for us to adapt, and it's probably even faster, because for the fact that by nature of such a huge country that they have to manage, people are not allowed to travel in the early days. So therefore many officials, many parents, many teachers have never traveled anywhere. And to expect them to be able to understand what you are talking about is not easy, because what they see on TV is never the same as what you could touch and feel. So therefore, to be able to love is the ability to embrace them, to give them the room to learn, so that I know that I'm going to learn Chinese language faster than even expecting my counterpart to learn English or to learn French. So therefore, I think it's just a matter of mutual understanding, which is very important. And the bigger part also is that we accept it as a fact that it is a huge economic power, that if you don't help educate them, it's going to be uncontrollable. It's just like your kid. So therefore, it is better that the entire community get closer and be able to understand each other. And I always put on my UN cap and said, we go back to the roots of understanding cultures, understanding religions, understanding languages, establishing mutual understandings, and I think it's becoming so very important. And especially these days, we all understand how tight the political situation globally when we are already at the worst time of the economic recession. So the more, I think, everybody have to be united.
Fantastic. Quick comment from you, and then I'm going to come out into the audience. If anyone's got a question, I'm about to come to you.
No, I just wanted to add that the first step to foster global cooperation is to realize that we are all in the same boat.
Yes, and I think you'll find it's a sinking boat at the moment.
Yeah, yes, I think and there are dangerous waters ahead. And so we have to develop empathy to each other, to understand different cultures, because all the problems are global. I mean, as you mentioned before, what happens in China will affect what's going on in Peru. So after realizing that, and then you start thinking in terms of the next goals that should be achieved. I mean, the time is running.
Fantastic. So I'm going to come out. Somebody's got